스토어프런트 갤러리 디렉터도 하시고 그러면서 뭐 대도시의 마지막한 어떤 상황들이나 또는 건축 이런 부분들에 대해서 굉장히 많은 관심이 있으셨고 그 이후에도 계속 그런 리서치나 연구나 활동들을 해오신 걸로 알고 있는데요. 간단하게 감독님께서 지난 그 시간 동안에 거쳐온 과정들 또 지금 이제 이 비엔날레에 참가하시게 된 계기, 동기, 모티베이션 그런 것들에 대해서 좀 간단하게 일단 설명을 부탁드릴게요.
More than 4 decades, 40 years since I started Storefront in 1984, always been interested about urban issues, architecture, and so on. But in the last few years, I begin to be interested in rural area. So I started a project called Sibichon in 2021, which was exhibited at the Vienna Biennale for Change in that year. And that was kind of a first exploration about Korean villages. And then we last year did also a second version of Sibichon 2. That was actually, and it was about different issues, but we did workshops and research, and we worked collaboratively with local community leaders in Gunsan, Mokpo, and then also we didn't actually act on Dongincheon, Bedari area, but we started to establish relationship. Part of this exhibition, or the kind, let's say the seed, the beginning of this exhibition here in Korean Pavilion, was our collaboration with these rural small areas, small mid-sized cities like Gunsan. It's a kind of a cross-section between rural, urban. Some of the reason why that the structure and the exhibiting material here is from that. Yeah.
레슬리 로코가 이번에 키워드를 미래의 실험실이라고 했잖아요. 근데 이제 한국관은 이에 대해서 뭔가 로컬 커뮤니티로 응답을 하는 것 같았어요. 한국의 로컬 커뮤니티에 대해서 어떤 가능성들 또 어떤 문제 상황들 그런 것들을 특별히 보셨는지 다른 해외의 다른 어떤 그 주변부 지역들이나 이런 거에 비해서 한국적인 어떤 특수한 상황들이 이 군산, 인천, 경기도 같은 곳에 어떤 것들이 있었는지 이 세 지역을 선택한 배경에 대해서 좀 듣고 싶습니다.
First of all, I would like to begin with similarities with rural conditions in other countries. Depopulation and the de-economization of the rural area is many factors, but the most prominent probably is urbanization. People moving from the countryside to the city. Now, that urbanization is also part of modernization and part of industrialization beforehand, because the jobs were transferred from farming into factory work. And as you know very well, South Korea went through a similar process from immediately after the World War. In fact, there were even already urbanization process going on in Japanese, But the reason why I started with saying this is because we have parallel or maybe later than the Western European or North American urbanization, but we have now actually gone beyond that level, and as a result, we basically left the villages behind. Yeah. Some people in South Korea consider villages as a new colonial era. There are colonies of urban power. Right? Now, so this is pretty much same as really all other modernized industrial advanced nations. The difference is there is a movement, self-generated movement, to return to villages from the city. But what's unique, I think, comparison to other countries is that it is actually all three generations are participating in this return. But I think the most important one, of course, is the young people, yeah, who are frustrated with lack of opportunity for good job in the city compared to kind of time and investment they made going through all the way through the university. And the pay doesn't look really that great. So they are kind of entrepreneurs. They go and they open up boutique shops, coffee shop, hamburger joints, you know. Yeah, and they also revive some local products, traditional materials, made like soju, 맥주, and makgeolli or something. But I think what's interesting about that, in terms of perspective, architecture and urban, is that they are taking urban culture into villages. City begin to reconnect back to the villages. I think that's very unique. Yeah.
기후 변화에 대해서 굉장히 관심이 많으신 것 같아요. 네, 그리고 그로 인한 유동성이나 또는 이주, 마이그레이션 그런 거에 좀 이제 주목을 하시는 것 같고, 그러면 이 기후 변화, 이주, 그다음에 지역이라고 하는 거에 이 상관관계를 어떻게 생각하고 계시는지요?
Yes, of course, that the migration and geography and the land is very much integral. And, well, you know, South Korea is worried about the population cliff. So I read in 2002 in a German paper, actually by Deutsche Bank, but they reported at that time that the German population of 82 million would go down to 54 by, I think, 2100 or something like that. May even be 2050. But, you know, it's still 82. In terms of environmental crisis, I think that if I say radical, less people on the planet, better for the environment and nature. Why people are worried about it? Because it's about economy. This idea of the growth forever model, GDP always up, and panic and fear of recession, right? Of course that is, but I think it's really more psychological effect that is more devastating than actual numbers. Well, first of all, that we have to change our way of economy production and consumption. Problem is that South Korea is export-based economy like Germany, right? So South Korea is quite getting more and more globalized. We ship outsourcing work somewhere else. So the question of labor coming to Korea, it may not be, you know, as significant as people imagine. But let's talk about in connection with geography. In Africa, there are many countries who's producing 5 plus 5 above children per family. So in terms of global terms, that inequality of citizens within their own country is also a problem. And so it makes sense that you actually invite high birth rate country labor. And we are doing that already with South Asians and Southeast Asians and so forth. But this is where it would alleviate the economic inequality between different nations. That is actually pretty much built from back in the old centuries of imperial colonialism. We just practice colonialism in different way now, more market as opposed to. But it is posing a very serious questions about how South Korean can handle this. A very homogeneous ethnic nation. We don't have much experience, as we know in recent times, of having other people, other culture living and working with us. But as numbers grow, the conflict and tension and fear and racism will begin to rise. Fortunately, there are other countries that are already doing this much ahead of us, and we can learn. You know, I want to add one last thing about this, is that South Korea have now advanced, and the idea was to catch up to the West. But I say now, we no longer copy to catch up what they're good at. No, now we look at their bad things and try to not to do that, right? So we don't catch up, we don't copy anymore.
그런 이슈가 지금 이 한국관 전시에서 어떤 식으로 뭔가 들어가 있고 발현되고 있는지 또는 어떤 대안들을 제시하고 있는지 뭐 그런 것.
Exhibitions made of 3 different communities, as we talked about before. So what they're showing in this exhibition is different examples of the issues. For example, in Dongincheon, the Bedari area is a very small neighborhood where there was a big expressway being built, which cut through the community and destroyed most of the buildings. So community over 15 years fought against it, and they were able to stop the completion of the highway. They had to go under them. But now still the highway have destroyed the building, so they're trying to reconstruct that land into something that would help the community to revive, right? So far, nothing has resolved in that issue. It has a lot of political ambitions and a lot of economical investments, but there are victims from this. And so it's about, from the victim's point of view, that whether that they can also project certain kind of future of their own, right? So in other words, this is giving them opportunity to give them the rights to have future. In Gunsan area, the SOA working with, each one is teamed up with architects and community leaders. The architects would do research and community leaders would provide the resources and their experiences, and also participation community members. And in the Gunsan area, as I mentioned, is that there are many houses now empty. You know, every city in Korea have moved their city hall to somewhere else. And everything follows. To new development, and then everything follows, and they go out from this old center and follow the Sicheon. But so what SOA is trying to do with Ang Tang Tang, which is kind of an alternative group of young people who are coming from outside, actually, and who's actually reviving local legacy, you know, regenerating the old market, for example, you know, and stuff, renovation of the old Shiminhagan, like Dongincheon questioning about development forever, that they're in Gunsan, they're saying, hey, let's accept ruin. Yeah. We cannot fight it all the time. It's a reality. And so let's accept it. Let's accept that the nature is going to come into the city, and these empty houses should be removed, and public spaces should be created, like pocket parks, which also Udang Tang Tang did in one place. You know. And around it, there are, you know, new community-based work spaces, educational spaces, 청년, spaces, of course, right? And it's supported by the city government, local government. Yeah. And that's another thing. I think that in South Korea, it seems like that both national and local governments are interested in regeneration, are interested decentralization, repopulation of villages, and they are supporting. And one could say comparably much more active than other countries. Ansan area is all about migrant workers from Nepal, Tibet, Southeast Asia. How different culture come and begin to work in the rural areas, and how they come to center like Ansan or Dongdaemun in Seoul, and becomes mixing place for culture and so forth. That's and how their life is, their living conditions, what are they thinking, and so for example, NHDM, they have made collages about this, did a survey, questionnaires.
굉장히 서로 다른 접근인 것 같아요. 배다리하고 군산팀하고. 배다리는 뭔가 자기의 어떤 지역을 계속 고수하면서 투쟁해 왔죠. 군산팀은 아예 계속적인 이동을 전제로 해서 뭔가 해체를 하는 도구라는 거, 그거에서 어떤 자기들의 소속감과 의미, 정체성 이런 거를 찾으려고 했죠. 그 두 접근 중에서 무엇이 더 유효할 것인가, 한국 사회에서 그런 부분에 대해서 어떤 생각을 가지고 계시는지요?
That in Dongyeoncheon, they fight back. They want to stay. They want to. They're resisting changes. They want to be the local. In Gunsan, it's more like accepting, and the decay, and then also accepting people coming from outside. Where in Dongyeoncheon, they fear the people coming from outside. And in Gunsan, obviously, it's more about the relationship of differences and separation of culture and society, even economics between the outside, in this case, is international as opposed to from city versus rural conditions. None of them are the solution that answers all. In fact, all three of them are solutions, right? So we have to think about not one formula. We have to think 3 or 4, 5, 6, all different conditions, problems, solutions, and the future.
도록을 보면 내일의 신화라는 챕터가 그 전면에 이제 상당히 많은 부분을 차지를 해요. 지금 그 신화에 대해서 얘기하는 이유가 뭘까요? 그리고 그 신화에 대한 챕터가 이 전시에도 같이 녹아 들어가 있는 이야기인가요?
Mythology, right? It's usually associated with the past, but we all know that Greek had mythologies. And but we thought about what if we could actually think about mythologies in the future. Why? Because we don't really know what's going to happen in the future. So maybe that because we can't picture the future in a definitive way, that may be the only way that we can do one, fictional, right? But we thought mythology is even better because it has figures, people, right? And stories, and tradition. So this came as a kind of a collaboration with one of the most important online magazine, Eflux. Right. They invited us to collaborate with them, and we proposed, let's do mythology. They invite 3 writers from the West. We invite 3 writers from Korea, right? In fact, our Korean writers, they really explored the mythology in the way that I saw.
Okay.
And why did we do that? As I explained, right? Now this goes back to the game, right? Which is the centerpiece. The premise of this exhibition is really critique on the ideology of progress. The game is more about not the local, small communities, but now it's about global, right? And historical. And it's looking at where that idea of progress, which one could speculate even that the seed of it was actually the Renaissance, but definitely by Enlightenment period. And it was an idea that humans were advanced, the future is better than the past, and that we would progress into a point of perfection, human perfection. I think in a way, either that it's the road to the Garden of Eden that 2.0 that we create, or perhaps that we ourselves become the God. Suddenly, we're feeling like we're losing control. Everybody's worried. Because the climate change is so unpredictable, unknown, and it's kind of scary because people are thinking that it's going to be the end of us, that we feel that we no longer have control of the future. Because in the before, the future was something that we knew. We owned because we wrote the future. So the game is about to test that. What is our future? So 14 different characters representing 14 different organizations, political, civic, economic, religious, and cultural institutions. Some representing Korea, some representing other countries around the world, poses questions that are political, economic, cultural questions in the future, from somewhere between this year and 2086. They pose these very serious questions about the future of society, what might happen. Players are invited in this kind of reality TV quiz show format to listen to the questions, see the choices on the screen, and they have 3 buttons in front of it. Red, green, blue, they select.
Yeah.
In front of it is a large 12 by almost 2 meter screen. It's a scoreboard, giant scoreboard to keep score of 16 players there, in a 1 hour span. It's modeled after ENIAC, the world's first programmable digital computer. And the score is tallied for a total of 3-day accumulation. And this algorithm translates the score into what we call echogram, which is in the front space. There we write the score of the environmental data for that year based on decisions that these players made throughout the whole length of this architecture biennale for the next 6 months until somewhere time in November. This is kept in score, and so we can now tell the future. Between Italian and Slovenian border, there is a town called, on the Italian side, Gorizia. The other side is Novi Gorica. 1948, new border was drawn between Italy and Slovenia, which was then part of Yugoslavia, right? And Tito, the leader of the Yugoslavia, then decided to build a socialist small town in that village to create the superiority of socialism to the capitalist. But as Slovenia joined European Union, the border is gone. So what if we invited South Korean government officials and North Korean government officials to that place in front of a place where border had disappeared and have a summit, right? of course, they're not going to come, right? So it could be more like we make a play. Could be a game, yeah. But the other thing is that what we'd love to do is that the Cevichon 2, if you saw a picture of it, that was like a reality TV show. It's about learn about what are the issues, what their desires, what their needs are, what their problem is, Or just I just kind of retire and write a book myself.